Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy The Unknowing Heroes, written by Clock Tower Echoes. There are thousands of statues in the Memorial Hall on Convergence, the galactic capital, where most heroes of 100 species stand triumphant and proud. There are soldiers, commanders, diplomats, reformers, and researchers who have left their mark on the galaxy in times of peace and at war. But there is one statue that stands out among all of them, as there are no other statues of its species. This sole statue is among the largest ever created and sits on a pedestal of walls and tombstones, yet it wields no weapons, wears no armor, carries no banner of any space-faring nation. In fact, said species can't be found on Convergence or even in space, for they are people still bound to the homeworld. Humans. The humans are a primitive people, inhabiting what is known to official records as System 3871-A3, who still fight amongst themselves and believe their crude nuclear ordnance to be weapons of mass destruction. Their spacefaring development is equally as slow and unimpressive, counting simply going to their own moon as a huge achievement, and seeing their glorified orbital closet they call the International Space Station as a peak of their scientific endeavors. Silly ideas, but pre-spaceflight primitives often have such delusions, so the humans are hardly unique in that regards, which might cause some to question why they are even represented in the Convergence, let alone the hallowed Memorial Hall. And that is because humans do the galaxy an impossible service without even realizing it. Hundreds of thousands of cycles of psionic beings of pure energy and thought tore their way into our reality, burning planets and shattering empires. They were an insidious invader, as they were not only attacked through conventional military means, but were capable of filling the mind with the thoughts of despair, of paranoia, of treachery, of ambition, and of hopelessness. To some, they promised their greatest selfish wishes of power and wealth, and to others they created a bleak, hopeless future that makes their lives meaningless. It took the greatest effort the galaxy had seen to that point, and to sacrifice of untold trillions to simply contain them, as great leaders stepped up and took charge of the fight against the invaders on the front lines and on the home front. Their legendary efforts and deeds forever immortalized in the Memorial Hall. The galaxy had finally won after hundreds of cycles of bitter conflict and desperate struggles. The psionic invaders from beyond the veil were finally defeated. Their ships were scattered upon the solar winds, and their dead left to float for eternity in the void. The stellar nations who survived buried their dead, gave their species, raised their memorials, and promptly went on to rebuild their destroyed worlds, care for the billions of displaced refugees they each now had. The galaxy had suffered, and it had burned enough. So everyone moved on, and were completely blindsided thousands of cycles later when the psionic invaders awoke and came once again. Unbound by death, the fresh new horrors used fallen bodies of the first wave to anchor themselves and pull themselves through before resurrecting their comrades and rebuilding their ships. Thousands of cycles had passed, but the galaxy burned once more. Again, planets were sundered. Again, dark psionic whispers filled the minds of countless billions. And again, stellar nations crumbled, as they were unable to fight an enemy that could attack both their soldiers and their civilians in such a manner at the same time. Again, brave heroes and stalwart paragons rose under impossible odds to perform impossible operations to stop the invaders once more, as generations lived and died in the Second War against the psionics. Again, they were beat back, the new invaders, with a tenacity and ferocity not seen since the first invasion. Again, the invaders' armies were crushed and their ships were destroyed, now casted into the black holes of the galactic center. And again, the invaders would arise, with fresh nightmares from their own dimension, and bring a reign of war and struggle to the galaxy once more, again, and again, and again. There have been 12 invasions that played out exactly like this. The galaxy saved by great individuals at the cost of hundreds of worlds and countless lives. 12 times the shattered ruins of the galaxy have tried to dispose of the dead invaders to prevent them from returning. Black holes and supernovas did nothing, and the galaxy's own psionics failed to contain them, with some even becoming hosts and puppets for the extra-dimensional invaders. Finally, in the aftermath of the 13th invasion, where only 4 stellar nations still stood in a galaxy that once hosted over 100, the survivors ran out of ideas. Too distracted with their own wounds, too broken to care, they simply gathered all of the remains of the invaders and cast them onto a random planet in the furthest system from their remaining territories. A system that was 3871-A3. They set guards around the edge of the system. No doubt none of them would survive should the psionic invaders again resurrect themselves and pull more of themselves into this reality. But when the time came, they would lay down their lives to give the rest of the galaxy a better chance. Except their time never came. First 100 cycles passed, and then tens of hundreds of cycles, and then thousands of cycles. There were never any signatures of the invaders returning. The galaxy cautiously cheered, having been free from the 1,000-year terrors. But others began to question why, finding their answers once they looked closer at System 3871-A3. The planet that those 4 surviving nations had chosen to dump the psionic corpses on actually contained sentient life, a fact missed or simply ignored in those grim, brutal post-war days. Seeing how the psionics could destroy planets and nations from the inside with their psionic whispers that poisoned the mind and darkened the heart, many outright dismissed the fact that there was even sentient life still on the planet who managed to survive the endless voice that even the dead psionics spoke, let alone any form of civilization. Yet, the evidence was there, tribes and stone buildings and settlements forming along their riverbanks. Again, many thought that such an anomaly, while curious and inspiring, could not last. Yet the humans continued to develop and expand, and with each cycle more and more dared to ask, had the humans somehow done the impossible? A series of stealth investigations were launched, and the results came back beyond belief. Not only were the remains of the invaders still on and actively implanted themselves in the minds of men, but an entire invasion had effectively been trapped on the planet, unable to overcome the humans, not because any of latent human psionic ability, but by the collective, unconscious willpower of their entire species. Without knowing it, humanity had done the impossible. Great civilizations, when their planets itself tried to prevent it, their history has been filled with cruelty, devastation, conflict, and division, some of which the trapped psionic managed to undoubtedly create. Yet, it has also been one of development, of creation, of hope, and of unity. They had become unwitting sentinels of an eldritch graveyard and guardians of a galaxy that they had no knowledge of, and succeeded when no one else did. Perhaps then it is unfair to deride them as just another primitive race, blindly banging rocks and atoms together. After all, their environment is a challenge to life and civilization itself, a challenge that many of the most advanced civilizations of the past have failed. When considering such a disadvantage from the very start, their current achievements and the fact that they've managed to get this far at all is almost miraculous. Some wonder, once humans eventually reach out to the stars and contact the wider galactic community, how they'll react to the information. How will they react to finding a statue of themselves in the memorial hall next to legends that they cannot even comprehend? While their reaction and newfound view of their world and themselves is unknown, the view that most of the galaxy holds of them is not. They are heroes. They have defeated a foe that has haunted history for eons without knowing it, created civilization despite of every dark whisper and sinister voice trying to prevent it, and have liberated the galaxy from a cycle of horror once thought infinite and inevitable. Humans are not heroes by strength of arms or virtue of technology. Humans are heroes simply for existing. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my videos. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.